Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And I suppose good morning for some of you out there, and perhaps good evening to some of you. Uh, Welcome to another episode of the Conversations with Dune and Friends. I am your host, Dune Nguyen, and today we have a wonderful guest joining us. Lots of lots of fun, lots of uh, topics that are quite diverse. And we have Shawn Gramiak joining us today. And before I invite Shawn to join us on stage here, I'd like to maybe just do a quick introduction. Shawn Gramiak has taught software skills at MacEwan University for nearly 20 years. His other clients include Northgate and Central Lions Senior Centers, the Provincial Government of Alberta, Enbridge, and a host of other tutorial clients. Teaching constantly reminds Shawn of how to do much more in terms of learning, how important it is that he needs to learn, and that the pursuit of knowledge is the key to happiness. And so Shawn keeps his presentation skills sharp by performing regularly at Rick Bronson's The Comic Strip in Edmonton, West Edmonton Mall, in fact, and the Yuk Yuk's clubs in Edmonton and Calgary. Shawn also enjoys cooking, gardening, and is working his way to becoming a small-scale vermicomposting worm rancher. Hopefully I said that right. And so he looks forward to the day when he can build and live in a self-sustained environment with his caregiver robots. So with that dream, being such a dreamer, I'm going to invite our guest to come right on stage here and say hello to everybody, Shawn.
Hello, Dune. Hello, everybody. How's it going?
Good. Well, thank you for joining us today. I know you were working, as many people do, during the May long weekend in the garden yesterday and maybe the whole weekend, right?
Pretty well. I mean, we after this interview is wrapped up, I still have to head back out there and get things done.
Oh, wow. Good man you are. I should spend more time outside, but somehow that doesn't seem to be a good pattern with me. I spend a lot of time indoors, even though we live on an acreage, right? And you would think, acreage people would spend more time outdoors, but
That you are wasting so much
yeah.
by not stepping outside your door.
Yeah, I stay. Yeah, we'll have to change that perhaps. So, my friend, maybe start with a story. Tell us, a story of how you came about. Were you born and raised in Alberta? I know you shared some uh, pretty interesting facts that maybe now would be a good time to kind of give us some of that context so that the audience know who we're listening to for the next hour here. And our audience,
Okay.
by the way, out there, the listeners, feel free to comment. And if you comment along the way, we can Shawn can certainly respond to your questions as well. So let's make it interactive. Let's make it interactive. So Shawn.
Sure, that'd be awesome. Yeah, well, a short bio. Born in 1967, the summer of love. Grew
Hmm.
up in a little town called Fost, Alberta, which is about, I guess, 2.5, 3 hours north of here.
Hmm.
Fost at that time had a population of 300 if you included dogs, cats, and cows. And I came from one of the poorest families in town, but not the poorest. We had kids that came to school with lard sandwiches made of bread and lard. That was their sustenance. We call
Hmm.
them egg McMuffins now, but
Hmm.
they're still not good. And yeah, I grew up on a self-sustaining hobby farm.
Hmm.
And as I was writing out my little bio, I realized that have been training to be a hippie for most of my life.
Yeah, this is your time, man. This COVID thing, yeah, my beard still
Honestly,
won't grow, but
well, but your hair will get longer. That's the beauty of it. I mean, not to be too facetious about it. This to me, the past few months have been a renaissance. Like all the stuff when I left my hometown, it was essentially because in small town Alberta, the town shuts down at 6 o'clock. Nothing else happens. I grew up in a town where stores still closed on Sundays.
Oh, really?
Uh, it was a very small town existence, and I could not wait to get to Edmonton because the idea of a restaurant being open at 1 a.m. enthralled me. I couldn't imagine such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now, as I get into my 50s, I still have land up in the hometown, and there are plenty of times where I think, you know what, it might be just time to move back there.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Wow. So 2 and a bit hours north of Edmonton, you said, right?
yes, on the shores
So,
of Lesser Slave Lake.
oh, okay. Well, I used to live in Westlock. In fact, I came to Canada, immigrated to Canada into Westlock. So I'm sort of partway there, right?
What a change that must have been.
Yeah.
You know, my brother lives not too far from Westlock. I remember when I was in my 20s, I spent a year living at my grandmother's place, and my brother still ran a farm at that juncture. And
Hmm.
we used to take our pigs to Westlock because they have a massive auction mart in there.
Yeah, yeah. We
So
had we had about
yeah,
5,000 people when I was there back in the 80s, and
yeah.
I think we still have 5,000 people there now.
Yes. Well, and I think that's the thing. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, we hit a tipping point not too long ago where most of our population is now urban. So,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what I like. One of my classmates I went through high school with, at one point described my hometown, Fost. She imagined it as a picture book in that you could come back to it at almost any time, and it would not have changed that much.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
that being said, I was back there. I guess it would be a year or so ago with my brother to look at our properties, and if anything, it's become more idyllic over time. It's
Oh,
become a much
really?
yeah, it's become a much more beautiful small town.
Why do you
Uh,
think that is? Why do you think that is that it didn't kind of get sucked into the modernization and all that?
well, the thing is, I think it did, but
Hmm.
the beauty is this: is that we were talking to one of our former neighbors
Hmm.
who has always stayed there, and he said, "You have to understand, Sean. Fost is one of the last bush towns, in
Mm.
that it's largely carved out of the bush. It has a general store. It has, I think, two churches. It
Hmm.
no longer has a hotel or a gas station. To get to most services, you're traveling 30 miles either way.
Wow.
So it's still gentrified by technology because everyone has, satellite dishes. They're connected with the modern world
Hmm.
and influenced by it, but it's still a lovely oasis,
Hmm.
you
So
know.
with it being sort of in the bush, so bush party, you don't have to go too far.
No, and that's the beauty of it. I think back to high school grad, and my high school grad, they don't have grad ceremonies like that. It ended at a community hall in this valley location. People got into fist fights and then
Hmm.
drank afterwards. All the students clambered onto a bus at the end of the night and were dumped off at their respective houses.
Yeah,
That won't happen. That just can't happen anymore. Or
yeah,
maybe it
yeah.
will. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So tell us, obviously, we're gonna share some of your reels from your comedy venture and a comedy kind of profession there. We're gonna talk a bit about the whole university teaching and then all that. Tell us about how you got into university teaching back 20 some years ago, about 20 years ago with MacEwan, back when it was called Grant MacEwan Community College, right?
Yes, indeed. I was working with a group called the Board Development Program that was part of Community Development, the Alberta Provincial Government. I was an administrative assistant who got hired ostensibly to learn and do desktop publishing of training materials.
Hmm.
And I found around the office, uh, I found that I could explain things to people reasonably
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
So if someone had trouble with software, I could sit down and we could puzzle it out and make it work. And my colleague said, MacEwan runs a computer train the trainer program,
Hmm.
and we could, and the department will pay for it. So I went, I took it, and as part of the program, you taught a course at the end. That was your practicum,
Oh, nice.
and your instructor came in at one point or another during the course with a camera, and your blood ran cold. But he set
Hmm.
up the camera in the back. got it running. And I knew I was on the right track because after I graduated a week or so later, the same department said, "Would you like to sign on as an instructor?"
Awesome. I got
Yeah.
kind of shiver running down my spine here with how, you never know some of those interactions you have with people or some of those, training or education, how it pans out. I would assume it's a fairly short kind of training stint. It's not like you went for years and years at this. So it converted very quickly is what I'm hearing.
Very much so. I mean, the premise to the entire course is that you came in with practical experience,
Hmm.
that you knew your content.
Hmm.
It was just a matter of, and I'm sure you know this as well. There's a world of difference between sitting down beside somebody and explaining how it works, and standing in front of 20 people
Hmm.
and conveying a concept through metaphor
Hmm.
and simile, and most of all, being entertaining while you're
Hmm.
doing it.
You
There's
bet. You.
Our instructor was magic. He could herd cats. He could
Yeah.
proverbially herd cats, and
Yeah.
he had an emphasis on entertainment.
Hmm.
That was his thing.
Hmm.
People just assume when you walk in a classroom that you know your material. That's a given. That's what they paid for.
Hmm.
But it's up to you to keep them engaged, especially if you're teaching databases. God forbid.
Yes. Yeah. I think more than ever, knowledge is pretty accessible via the web. And so when it comes to a training experience, we really have to focus on the experience side of it, right? What would inspire them? What would excite them? What would shift their thinking beyond just a bunch of PowerPoint bullets? Don't shoot them to death with bullets, right?
Well, that's it. I mean, I think we've all went through the experience where we've had the instructor or teacher who just pushed endless notes up on
Hmm.
the projector or up on the board. And yeah, the days of rote memorization
Hmm.
are kind of gone.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I don't know if you know Michelle, but Michelle says, "Can you see that on the screen? The comment Michelle made."
No, I'm afraid
Okay,
I can't.
that's okay because you're on an iPad. I'll read it out to you. It
Oh,
says, "You
hang
see it?"
on. I can't see it. Oh, I'm looking at my second display. Bush party in the backyard.
Yeah.
I like your style. I like that idea.
There you go. Yeah. Hey, Sean, just a quick note. Is there any way of moving your iPad a little bit up higher so that, if not, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I have a feeling if I move it much higher,
Yeah.
it will topple over and it'll be a
Okay.
debacle.
All right.
Everything is so precarious. My desktop right now is a Rube Goldberg machine
Yeah.
waiting to fall in on itself. So,
Cool. So there's someone else who also appreciate Bush Party, right? And
yeah.
somebody actually knows what it is because I bet you if you say the words Bush Party out in the general public, some of them would be thinking like, "What the heck is that?"
Oh,
Right?
undoubtedly. Undoubtedly.
But yeah,
It's
yeah.
a
So
very Albertan thing.
yes, yes, rural Alberta in particular. So tell us. So you grew up in a small town, and I know you maybe share us with us a sort of an insight or an anecdote that just give us a picture of how small town sort of in the time that it was, you know, sort of. Living on the farm, working on our farm. Any quick story that tells us the kind of the life you grew up in before converting into this, Edmontonian and university instructor and comedian and corporate events and things like that. Tell us where you
Oh,
started.
okay, I'll try to keep this one very quick. Uh, Again, we lived on a subsistence farm, and as a result, my father and my brother were also hunters, trappers, and fishermen. Our family still holds a trap line in northern Alberta. My
Wow.
brother still traps.
Hmm.
Uh, but when I was a kid, being a commercial fisherman in Alberta has two phases. You can set nets in the summer, or a lot of fishermen set nets in the winter, and that involves chopping a hole in the ice, sending a net underneath the ice to another hole a distance away, and setting a net beneath the ice. By law, at least when I was a kid, every 48 hours that net had to come up. And
Mm.
it didn't matter if it was 30 below with howling winds on the ice, you went out and you lifted your nets. And I
Mm.
remember as a kid, The best gloves to use to take fish out of nets were these white cotton gloves that slimed up with fish slime and
Mm-hmm.
froze into claws around your hands.
Mm.
And I remember standing out there with my brother. My brother worked harder than I did.
Mm-hmm.
I was a gadabout.
Mm-hmm.
But 30 below, howling winds, pulling live fish out of nets, throwing them into boxes, putting the nets back into the ice. And while all this is going on, I'm thinking to myself, I am going to work so hard in school that I can afford to get to post secondary on scholarships so I
Mm-hmm.
never have to do this in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
Nothing.
sounds cruel, but it was the motivator that made me change my life.
Absolutely. You know, when I came to Canada, my first job, a 13-year-old first job was picking rocks and lifting bales. You know how hard work
Yeah,
that is. You know, a
yes.
few days of that, and you are thinking, okay, what can I do to improve this situation, right? Because that's
Yeah.
hard work in
Best
the
move
hot sun, right?
Yeah, yeah. Best move I ever made was take a year off between high school and post secondary to work to earn money for my tuition. I ended up working on a brush clearing crew in the middle of winter. Again, horrible job. Uh, and my grandmother had a larger farm, but my brother inherited it when my grandfather took over. And he inherited a variety of farming equipment that should have been in museums. So
Mm-hmm.
he worked much harder than he ever needed to. And that's also why he ended up owning a construction business instead. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
route to go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you for sharing because I think it's important to I always say to people when I do training and corporate training and university teaching and consulting is, you know, context before content. So it's good
Yes.
to get into some content that we'll get into here in this session, but it's also good to know who we're hearing from and their background. Tell us the kind of courses that you teach at MacEwan over the last 20 years and other organizations as well, direct kind of corporate training, Enbridge and Alberta government and so on. What are the courses that you tend to focus on?
Well, primarily I'm a Microsoft Excel person,
Mm-hmm.
and I do teach the Office suite,
Mm-hmm.
but it's primarily always been Microsoft. I did do a little bit of work for Alberta Health Services back in the day when it was Capital Health, and
Mm-hmm.
I taught staff how to use Front Page
Mm-hmm.
when the thought was staff would maintain the intranet within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I've had experience with Dreamweaver and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
When I moved into seniors teaching,
Mm-hmm.
I started again bare bones basic teaching. But the moment the iPad was released on the market, that's the first time I had students come to me and go, okay, when are you going to start doing courses on iPads?
Mm-hmm.
And when are you going to start working more with phones?
Mm-hmm.
And that was amazing because I've been used to years of seniors being kind of trepidatious about technology, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment they saw what an iPad could do, their eyes lit up.
Mm-hmm.
They bought into that stuff almost instantly, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of what I do now is kind of training seniors to get comfortable with the mobile world.
There you go. So you know, a lot of people take a long time to get to clarity of who their target ideal sort of customers are. Sounds like you have gained that clarity over the years in terms of the, you know, the seniors and the technology that is perhaps to some other people might be kind of fairly commonplace, but helping the
Yeah.
seniors sort of embrace it is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, what people don't understand, they still don't grasp. It's become a common joke in society that old people just don't get technology. They don't.
Hmm.
They're just not wired. They don't really get it. The problem is that many do. It's just that seniors don't really buy into the lexicon that's built around technology. I
Hmm.
mean, I honestly believe that technology has built an entire language around it that, in some respects, serves them, but in a great extent allows a lot of people to charge $75 an hour to
Hmm.
explain something that's actually pretty logical
Hmm.
if they
Hmm.
just got past the terminology.
Right, right. In other words, once you help people clarify their interest and motivation, and just shift their perspective on how they see technology, they are quite smart people. It's just this block that tends to have been put in place by, somewhere along the line by the technology company, by the way it's implemented, that folks sort of somehow believe that this is not for them, right?
Exactly. And what I like now is that, and I don't want to sound like a proponent of the pandemic in the slightest,
Mm-hmm.
but it is number one kind of showing a need for everybody to embrace technology to at least some extent. But I think it's also forcing a lot of technology or technological organizations to honestly make their apps and platforms as user friendly as they've always said they have been.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Now, for technology companies, the rubber's hitting the road too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because if you can't figure out how to use something within 5 minutes now, uh, you don't deserve to have a stake in the
Yeah, yeah.
marketplace.
Expectation has sort of moved on and kind of gone up. Now,
Yeah.
I would like to share a video of your comedy profession there, and we're going to get back to teaching. We'll get back to many other things, but maybe this might be a good time to kind of prep for that video. So maybe tell us about your kind of when did you start with comedy, and how did it start, and what are you up to now these days? Before I cue up that video.
I am coming up to yeah, I'm somewhere in the ballpark of 20 years, and
Hmm.
I still refer to myself as an ardent dilettante or a very strong hobbyist. I've not taken the route of giving up everything and living in my car to fulfill my dreams. I
Hmm.
mean, that's a 20-year-old person's dream.
Hmm.
To me, comedy is the best part-time job in the world, or entertainment is the best part-time job in the world. And I got
Hmm.
into it as a result of taking a course through Metro Continuing Education. And oddly enough, I signed on as a computer instructor with them like 3 years ago. But I
Hmm.
took a stand-up writing course that is still being offered by an instructor by the name of Paul Sveen, and Paul Sveen has changed a lot of lives through
Hmm.
that comedy course. And the graduation for the course, we got to do a show at Yuk Yuk's.
Hmm.
We did a show in front of friends and family. So that
Hmm.
set all sorts of unreasonable expectations
Hmm.
because you walked off the stage thinking you were a rock star and you had mastered the art.
Hmm.
And then 2, 3 weeks later, you go back for a real amateur night and you realize that this is not as easy as you deluded yourself into thinking it was.
The deeper you deep, the more you realize that there are much more to learn, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And then you start the process of learning all the joys of crowd dynamics. And every show is a new show and a different show. You learn how, to dig yourself out of the holes you've dug, all those wonderful things.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm going to cue up the video right now, and so I'm going to be off camera. And feel free to watch it on camera and comment if you like. But I'm going to take myself out here.
How the hell you doing, ladies and gentlemen? How's it going? I think we can do better than that. I think you're the little crowd that could. I think you people can go ape shit. Let's try it again. How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? See a little fake enthusiasm. That's all I'm looking for. Half the crowd is ladies. We all know you faked enthusiasm at one point or another in your lives. Right? That's good. That's awesome. Okay, let's get this out of the way, too. I know I'm a creepy-looking little guy. I get that. I know that I look strange. The point was brought home to me when I did a show in Calgary. My opening act comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, buddy, that's a good look. For you, buddy, that's a good look. Do you own a van?" And at first I didn't get it. I didn't understand. And then I realized, wait a second, based on my looks, he thinks I own a van and perhaps I abduct people. So I had to take him aside and say, listen, buddy, no, I don't own a van. I drive an ice cream truck. And I know where your kids go to school. I don't, but anytime someone's going to say something stupid, I'm going to fire back because I enjoy doing that. My looks, I know, they get me into trouble. I get it. Last summer, I'm walking across White Avenue and I hear a truck make a turn behind me. And I hear the driver yell, "Get across the road, you tight-ass slut!" So of course I'm thinking, holy crap, these jeans make my butt look small? Like who, honestly, who is taking this home at the end of the night? How many beers do you have to down to take this home? 4 on average, it turns out. Oh. It's gotten so bad, my friends, when they take me home, when they drive me home, my comedy buddies, what they'll do is they will park and they will leave the lights on while I'm getting through the front door of my house. That's right, that's something you do for a lady. Because you're afraid someone's going to leap out of a bush and attack her. So I finally had to take my buddies aside and say, listen, if someone jumps out of a bush, when I turn and they see this, at that moment in time, that buys me enough hesitance, enough time to reach across and grab their collar and say, this is done when I say it's done. I love you as a crowd. I will tell you that right now. I love you as a crowd. Sometimes we're in front of crowds who aren't very nice. Any folks in here from Fort McMurray? Nothing wrong with the Mac. Nothing wrong with it at all. But it was the first place I ever did a show and had a drunken truck driver come up to me after the show and go, "You suck balls." And I was like, did we go to college together? Just seems like a very private thing to know. What can you say? The only thing that I have some slight problem with are the number of older people who are driving vehicles who are like way too big for them. No, you know it's true. You've seen this. You've seen this already. You know, you're whipping down the highway and someone whips by you in like a Winnebago the size of a Greyhound bus, and you realize the person driving it is like 102. That can't be safe. And again, crossing White Ave, SUV makes a turn. Me and a total stranger in the intersection nearly go up for a hood ride. And this is the thing, if it was a young driver, I would have just hammered on the hood and went, "What the?" And then the driver would have got out, and words would have got exchanged, and the situation would have got resolved somehow. But if it's an old person driving, you hammer on the hood and you go, "What the?" They panic and hit the gas and run you away. You're laying there in a body cast thinking, you know, I'm partially responsible for this. May as well address another question that's going on in this room. I can feel it. I can feel it right now. Yes, I don't have a very active romantic life. To be honest, I can't. The thing is, I can't use Twitter or eHarmony or any of that crap because the moment I post a picture of myself, game over. Unless I can follow. Did you say Amber Alert? That's actually funny. I'm going to use that and never give you credit for it. Thank you very much, buddy. No, that's good. I like it. No, and honestly, for me, like, I have to rely on someone in this audience having a History Channel fetish. And I know, even in a crowd this size, there's at least one woman who's dreamed about sleeping with a Civil War cavalry sergeant. I know, because I have the costume at home. Totally authentic. Once again, you've been an absolutely wonderful crowd. But I noticed some of you had some road pop, some wobbly pop, some joy juice. There's young people in here. Maybe you had a hit of wacky tobacco before the show started. I don't know. But if you're feeling tipsy or out of sorts, please grab a cab or get a designated driver to get you home safe, because we want to make sure a crowd like you makes it back here, all right? That's a very traditionally Edmontonian response. Long hang time, then a couple guilt claps, and the rest of you chime in. And I understand it. I know that a lot of you support what I'm saying, but a lot of you are also sitting back there saying things like, Quit preaching to me, you smelly bong-smoking hippie. This is Sunday night. I'm going to down a 2-4, wash it back with a 26er Jaeger. Then I am heading over to Hudson's and I will punch the first bouncer I see in the face. And then I'll hike up my bra straps and go in for another drink. The reason I'm serious about this, kids, is I had a really good friend who got nailed for driving while impaired. And the cops took him down to the cop shop and they rolled out the breathalyzer. And my friend's blood alcohol content was so high, I kid you not, this guy actually blew 3 police officers. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Shawn Gramiak. Thanks very much for listening.
Awesome. Wonderful. That was fun.
Quick little side note, quick little side story, a little bit of trivia related to that. When I set that up, that's a recording that happened a number of years ago. I finally kind of saved up the money to get a friend of mine to come in with 2 professional quality cameras, and he was a video editor. We both went through Nate together. We both took radio and TV through Nate, and he started his own production company. So he came in, set up the cameras, did the taping, the whole 9 yards. The show was a little bit disorganized and double booked. More performers showed up than needed to be for the show, all this sort of stuff. It's always tough getting a crowd into a room, especially on a Sunday night. But to make it even more challenging, that was the day West Edmonton Mall got a bomb threat
Oh, no.
from, I don't know if it was Al Qaeda or who it was, but they'd been put on a warning that there was a bomb threat for the mall. So it was like I was starting to think that a lot of things were transpiring against me, but it turned out to be just a magical taping. It was just so much fun to do. Beautiful crowd. And I had a colleague of mine, Sterling Scott, a devastatingly funny comic who got up before I did. And when the crowd was not as warm as it needed to be, he basically took him to task. And he said, listen, everybody, he says, the rental of the camera sitting in this audience is more than all of you paid to get in here. So you better get some energy into this room. And they responded, and they made it a magical event.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So obviously you're going to continue with this comedy gig and comedy profession, and also combining that with all the professional training that you do. And now tell us about this other thing. I'm going to mention the company name, and then you can tell us all the rest. And what's called GRUNT multiservice. You started that about 20 years ago. Tell us about the evolution of it and where it's heading. And yeah.
Well, I always thought grunt multi-service is, I think, a classier way of saying jack of all trades. And when I started out in technical services, the jobs I took and the contracts I took were the grunt jobs, the jobs that generally no one else wanted to do. And that's how I established my reputation and started building and getting bigger and better contracts as time wore on. The actual name and the actual logo comes from the fact that we're from a family of pig farmers. And I always found that pigs, not particularly good looking, but ridiculously industrious, hardworking, faithful, kind, and nice. And they represent everything that's kind of good in the animal kingdom. So I thought, why not take a little bit from your history, apply it to, what you're doing now in the future. And as we've discussed before, there may very well come a time where I go back to raising pigs. Who knows what's going to happen in the future?
You're going to do the 360 thing, hey?
Well, yeah, honestly, Dune, the past few months have taught me how many skills I grew up with that I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
or that I failed to appreciate as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
The life that I grew up in is perfectly suited in the event that we go through like a super serious recession.
Mm-hmm. In other
And
words, self-reliance and living on the land and with the land and from the land and all that.
yes, and I honestly think I don't want to be a doom and gloom sayer here on this podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
if you're watching the news and seeing what's happening stateside,
Mm-hmm.
and you're starting to see, again, the lineups at all the big box stores and all these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is not meant to be making light of the situation, but we are people are drawing the comparisons to, say, communist Russia,
Mm-hmm.
where we're going to line up to get our provisions.
Mm-hmm.
And my feeling is that if you can grow a majority of your food in your yard,
Mm-hmm.
uh, even if you don't need the skills,
Mm-hmm.
they are great skills to have because they'll save you so much money in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it also changed your perspective about the importance of the basic things as well. We take it for granted more likely when we just easily get it from somewhere. When we work hard for something like food, we probably see it differently.
Well, and in your story, the one thing I am familiar that you came through the refugee camps. When you
Mm-hmm.
came through them, was it literally a scenario where you came in with the shirt on your back and that was basically it?
Yeah, yeah. I think it might have been half a shirt, but yes.
Okay, and then you arrive in Canada. I mean, you are the classic immigrant success story in that you came here with very little,
Mm-hmm.
but you've tapped into abundance through hard work.
Yeah, yeah.
S-
Very, very
s-
grateful to be in Canada, and yeah, we came with just shirts on our back and a $1,200 loan to the government because the flight tickets and everything there to pay back over a number of years. And
Yeah,
but the full immersion into Westlock, Alberta, was really helpful because it you learn English very quickly. And yeah, I was 2 hours later after landing in Edmonton and having been driven up to Westlock, Alberta, I was in school. So immediate immersion and yeah. So
yeah.
now tell us more about your perhaps. Let's go back to the corporate training and the university teaching and the technology thing. Any interesting stories to share about one encounter that you had in class? We'll leave the names of the people out of it, but any of those kind of stories that you think might be kind of interesting or insightful?
Well, uh, I was told I could use this by the actual student. I used to work as one part of the continuing education division. I used to work for Minerva Senior Studies, and that
Mm-hmm.
really was a program that got me a foothold with the Lions Centers and allowed me to develop my seniors training uh, uh, capabilities, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I do remember chatting with a lady, and she was asking me about computer viruses, one of my senior students.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her, just matter of factly, do you have a firewall? And she goes, I'm not sure, but I think the room around the furnace downstairs is made of asbestos. And I mean, that's the genuinely lovely, innocent sort of stuff that
Yeah.
happens. I also remember, and I tell this story in class quite a bit. Doing a seniors class, we were doing an introduction to the internet class. So I got people. My favorite thing to send people after is pictures of hairless Egyptian cats. And of
Mm.
course, it is. I forget as you get older, hearing, vision, those things start to dissipate. Nicest lady in the classroom goes looking for hairless Egyptians. I don't know if you've ever seen what you see doing a Google image search for hairless Egyptians,
Mm.
but back in those days, Google wasn't so strict on the safe search.
Mm.
So this lady's eyes get big as saucers. I don't even have to see what she sees. So I just slowly saunter over to her screen. She's furiously clicking her mouse. She manages to hit the close button. She learns what the close button is by the time I get there. And she looks up and she goes, I don't think you're interested in anything like that. And I said, chances are I'm not interested in that either. I guarantee you. But that's,
Mm.
that's that. Oh, last but not least, and this is just a comic tragedy. 9/11,
Mhm.
the morning of, I go to work, and I don't really listen to the news or anything before I leave for work. So I get to work, I'm teaching this class, and my favorite thing to do at that point was taking new internet folks to the FBI website to show them the top 10 most wanted posters. And we can't get to the FBI website. It's down. It's
Mhm.
not taking anyone.
Mhm.
And I'm going, this is interesting. The FBI site isn't up. And my whole class looks at me like I'm a lunatic. And they said, do you know what happened this morning? And I said, well, I think I heard something on the radio. What was going on? And I was totally oblivious
Wow.
to the fact at that point.
So
And
you were.
just to show you how egotistical comics are, I was an amateur comic that night.
Mhm.
And even though there's the epic tragedy that happened down south,
Mhm.
we were all choked because amateur night got canceled.
Mm.
It's strange.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Sometimes we don't know the impact until looking back, right? We in the moment we just don't realize the enormity of it, right?
Undoubtedly, I just recently watched a PBS special on George Bush. And I mean, it was very easy to kick George Bush around while he was in power, but I can't imagine sitting there
Mhm.
reading books to kids and
Mhm.
constantly getting like whispers in your ear that this has happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
Incredible,
Yeah.
incredible.
Hey Sean,
Yes.
I know you have a website. I know you're working on launching other websites and updating and whatnot. Would it be a good thing to maybe show what you have on your current website that's been around for a while, the one that's hosted by Google?
Sure. Yeah. ShawnGramiak.com. Yeah,
You
most
bet.
likely
So,
my comedy site. Yeah,
you bet. So I'm going to just share it here and tell me if you can see it in just a moment here. I'll bring it in
sure.
and I'll be off camera so that the website can have the screen there.
Okay. That's it. You got it. That is me. Quick little nifty story about that cover photo as well. A dear friend of mine, Lynette Johnson, has taken some of the best pictures of me I've ever had taken. That was taken at I think the downtown LRT platform. And she kept telling me, Sean, get closer to the edge, get closer to the edge, get closer to the tracks. I said, as soon as I step onto the warning strip, they're going to send security down here. You do realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, no, no, don't worry, don't worry. So I get closer to the edge. I step on the warning strip and I hear over the loudspeakers, ladies and gentlemen, unauthorized photography in Edmonton transit centers is unauthorized and against regulations.
Wow.
Please stay where you are. A security agent is being sent to you.
Wow.
And luckily, we got the world's nicest security guard. He just came up and said, you know what? Next time you do this, number one, don't stand too close to the tracks, which vindicated me.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, get a get a license. It's really easy to get
Mm-hmm.
a photo shoot license.
Yeah, a permit. Yeah.
But yeah, but there's nothing quite like hearing the stentorian voice of ETS Transit telling you you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Now I know you're a comedian and but I wasn't aware that you're also an amiable dinner companion. is that a is that a
Sometimes, sometimes that's how I get paid. That's
ah, wonderful, wonderful.
yes,
Well, it's a good gig if you can get it.
exactly.
So tell us. I just realize it's just a number of words here on a word cloud, but as I look at it, it resonates with me. You're quite a complex dude.
I don't think so. That's the problem. I don't believe I am.
I'm kidding.
Thank you for saying so, but I mean, I don't know.
What I mean is very multifaceted. Is what I.
Yes,
Um, but I was just trying at comedian thing, and it just didn't resonate there, Sean.
but hang on, hang on. Let's come back to this topic.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people are much more. You're a perfect example of it. You teach, again, skills courses through MacEwan, a whole variety of them, and a whole variety of post-secondary organizations. But you love playing guitar. That's that. I would say that is one of your raison d'être, if I can mangle the words.
Oui.
And so I think people are naturally much more multifaceted, but I think we get that kind of taught out of us over time. And I hope the new normal is a new normal that starts to celebrate the fact that, we're more than our jobs. I in my earlier years when I worked with the government, one of my colleagues was a lady by the name of Wendy McDonald, who taught career planning at MacEwan, and I was a rather egomaniacal person who did not listen. And she gave me some of the best advice at that point in my time, and it took me 30 years to learn it. And that is, your career is more than just your job.
Absolutely. That's on social media, on Facebook the other day, a couple months ago, I posted this thing that says, your career is much more than your job, and your life is much more than your career.
Undoubtedly. And, I talk to a lot of people now, because when you hit your 50s, if you don't mind me asking, Dune, how old are you?
I am there. I can honestly factually say that I was in Nam in 69, Shawn, if that impresses you any.
Okay, well, that explains the trip to the refugee camp as well. I mean, that I can understand. Those would have been rough times. But we're of the same age group where we've seen enough of life now to kind of see through a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I think to have a much better idea of what the value of life is. I watched your interview with Mr. Padmanabhi.
Absolutely. Kasim and Padmanabhi, the owner of Padmanabhi vegan restaurant. Yeah.
Yes, and both of your philosophies really shone through in that interview. And this is coming from a guy in his 20s who was a rabid capitalist. I wore three-piece suits. My only ambition was to make money by moving paper from one side of a desk to another. Like I thought the Gordon Gekko speech of Wall Street was brilliant. And the speech from Glenn Ross about closers was fantastic. But again, I think recent times are shaking our beliefs and starting to kind of show the fault lines in those sorts of systems.
Yes. So tell us about this, the movie jerks. Bit of a project for you there.
A little, yeah. It's a project that's become, again. I hope at some point it becomes a second career. Basically, myself and a colleague, JP Fournier, invite guests on, and we talk about films that are usually very low quality films, generally garbage. We love garbage. So we're coming up to 400 episodes, 400 1 hour long episodes. And we just wrapped up an interview yesterday. It'll be happening a couple of weeks down the road. It'll air a couple of weeks down the road. We did a podcast with Trent McClellan from CBC's This Hour Has 22 Minutes. And I kind of worked my way up the ranks along with Trent. And I am so happy to see the success he's enjoyed, because he is one of comedy's good guys. He deserves every ounce of success he gets.
Now, before we leave this website, is there any other page that you like to highlight before we leave this website here?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I think if you want to actually go to the episodes, your best bet is to go to themoviejerks.podbean.com. And that's where the downloadable or listenable...
Can I click on it now?
By all means, yeah. Go ahead and see it. The actual home website is themoviejerks.ca, But honestly, get to the meat of the matter, go to Podbean and take a listen. We've had guests such as American Ninja Warrior's Matt Iceman. We've had him on. We've interviewed Bobby Lee from Mad TV. We've had a lot of local celebrities. Mark Meir, who is a bona fide celebrity here in Edmonton in the theater world, in the cosplay world. He's the voice of, I think it's Commander Shepard in Mass Effect from BioWare. We've had a whole host of Edmonton theater celebrities. This has been just a lot of fun talking to fascinating people.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Now, when you said this was possibly a second career at some point, if you're counting, it might be your third or fourth, because you seem to have a few balls in the air there that are quite diverse. So that's cool. That's cool. Appreciate you sharing that. So as we round the corner here on the hour, Shawn, are there any stories or sort of anecdotes or insights or even words or phrases that you want to share with our viewers based on the conversation that we've had there, based on the background that you have and the journey you had so far? Anything at all?
I'm going to say this. I'll get up on the soapbox and say this. I understand everyone working. I understand we're evolving into two separate worlds. Everyone who is an essential service provider right now is probably living a more stressful life, but their life is probably not much different than before when the pandemic happened, because they're working at their job. As you know, being a creative and as being an instructor, our worlds have changed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm very much of the belief that if you entered into this pandemic period and you walk out of it the exact same person, you've squandered a great opportunity to explore what you're capable of. This has given us a chance to unplug ourselves from a whole variety of bad habits, to build some really great new ones. And I hope going forward, we get to see a world where it's a renaissance of small business. Community comes first, and people come first before profit. And until that happens, I'm going to be in my garden. I'm going to be farming my worms, and I'm going to be trying to learn everything I should have learned when I was a kid.
It's a rediscovery of sorts.
A renaissance.
Rediscovery, reconnection to our roots. And so listen, thank you for sharing the stories and the insights and your various professions along the way here with us. As we wrap this up, are there 3 words that you like our audience to just kind of keep in mind? If you kind of try to summarize everything that's been discussed here in the hour, what might be 3 words that are top of mind that the audience, you might invite the audience to kind of keep in the forefront? It could be a repeat of what you said, but how would you encapsulate everything that we discussed in the last hour into 3 words?
Let's see. Let's say persistence, humor, and learning.
Persistent, humor, and learning. What a powerful combination. Persistence, humor, and learning. Well, thank you. You definitely demonstrate that through your career and through our conversation here today, those 3 character and qualities and whatnot. And so with that, we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today, Shawn Gramiak, everybody. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers out there for your time now and later on watching the replay. This video will be on there forever, and as long as Facebook will let this continue. So do watch us in the rerun as well. And maybe if you comment even afterwards, Shawn might be able to add his answers to that. So again, have a great day, everyone. And until we meet again, take good care of yourself and take good care of one another. Have a great day.